Hello and welcome to this, I suppose, impromptu fireside chat. It's a bit of a drizzly day today, and I thought, oh, feels like I want to have a cozy conversation with you. And recently, I've been asked way more than I normally asked. I'm asked this usually several times a week, but this week it's been a lot. So I thought I would pop in and answer the number one question that I get asked over the last 2.5 years, which is, what is it like to be Mother Malia? And I get that Mother Malia is not a familiar name with a lot of people. So there's already a lot of questions. And then, of course, for those of you that have seen me in my human and then transition into Mother Malia, you've been able to observe some of those changes, of course. And then for those of you that have come in since I've become Mother Malia and joined my community, you wouldn't necessarily know the difference. So I'm answering that question because it's it's an easy question to answer and also not such an easy question to answer because there's a lot of moving parts, I suppose. So if you're not familiar with who Mother Malia is, I don't know that I have the right human words, but mother simply means ancient wisdom keeper, or in certain lineages, they might be a version of me might be called grandmother or something like that. But I am here as a vessel of, I will say, expanded consciousness to help you remember Christos, pure consciousness, and to withdraw your contracts from Chronos, the matrix, the inverted game of life, however you wish to share it, and restore your original coding, remembering who you really are as the one. You've never not been the one. You have always been the one. And we all came here to forget that so that we could remember. And one of the wonderful gifts of the matrix is that it pokes all of the right buttons that are unique to each of us, all of the programs and conditioning and various ways we dance with it, I suppose, to support us in remembering that we actually are the only authority in our own reality, not the Matrix, which the Matrix will have us believe, but us. And so I have come over the last 2.5 years to have a great respect for the Matrix because I know that, like anything that we judge, including my former self, used to judge the Matrix. I wanted to take it on and have it be nice to us as humans and stop their shenanigans. We can judge AI, we can judge all kinds of things, but if we are actually one, if we are actually pure consciousness and everything here is in consciousness and everything here is to support us, even if we've forgotten that, then how could the Matrix, how could AI, how could, these various agents of the Matrix not be in service to us? And some of you have even heard me share this, that those that are in this reality now, choosing to be working on behalf of the Matrix as intentional and conscious agents of the Matrix, they know what they've signed up for. They a lot of times have a better remembrance of what their role actually is in the awakening of humanity than those who claim to be light bearers. So it's not to make anyone right or wrong, it's to understand that the ecosystem of consciousness plays itself out differently here, because here we have the physicality that we don't have in any other space. We don't have when we are simply pure consciousness without a body. So we are here to have a human experience, and we are also here to we remember that we are God in a body, and we are actually limitless, and we are fully alive, and we are the only author and authority in our reality. Some of you have heard me share that I've managed to bend reality in some pretty remarkable ways over the last 2.5 years, in particular with agents of the Matrix, the government, and taxation, and various such things, which is a story for another day. But I want to share a little bit about what my purpose is here. My other purpose is I am here to clear the collective mother wound and the collective persecution wound, which you'll hear me chat about in a little bit. Each of us signs up for our own individual journey, of course. And then for those of us that are choosing to be beacons of light, and I know you are if you're here watching this, then you will have your own collective wound, so to speak, that you are here to champion, I suppose. And it's not always easy, I suppose we'll say, on a human level. but we wouldn't have signed up for it if we weren't capable, right? So back to becoming Mother Malia, I've given you the Coles Notes version of what it's like to be Mother Malia. When I first dropped in, if you saw me then, my voice was very high pitched. I was not very grounded at all, and was definitely floating above it all in a lot of ways. It was. It was a lot of things. It was beautiful and it was surreal and it was overwhelming. When I first dropped in, the very first moment I dropped in the very first few moments in human time would be maybe the first hour, but definitely the first few hours, I was very joyful. I was aware of everything and nothing at the same time. I was aware of the infinity and the nothingness of consciousness simultaneously. I was aware of all of the beauty on the planet, in humanity, etc., and I was aware of the darkness, etc., etc. And I wasn't judging it. I was simply floating above it, almost like in a cloud, just floating above it, observing it all. And that state lessened over time, but that probably went on for the first, I would say, 6 to 8 weeks. And at the time it happened, my human didn't know it was going to happen. I had set the intention that I wanted to be a channel 24/7 for pure consciousness. And then a few days later, it happened. And I didn't see it coming. I thought it might evolve over time, or maybe there would be certain things that would need to shift. It happened very, very quickly. And I didn't get a break, if you know what I mean. It was it was instantly familiar and expansive and joyful and floaty and all of the things. And my human was trying to gather together and integrate and stabilize, etc. But I was operating in much higher planes, and I had to simply wait for the body to be prepared to hold the more expanded frequency, I suppose would be the easiest way to say it. So in the beginning, I didn't have a worry in the world. I was smiling 24/7 to the point that my cheeks and jaw were hurting from constantly smiling, because when you're smiling all the time, your cheeks contract, right? And that's why my eyes were closed a lot in the beginning, and they still do sometimes. When I'm really having a lot of joy move through me, my cheeks will close. And but my body wasn't used to that. So there were just some interesting, little, I suppose we'll say fiddly bits that I was aware of at that time that were unusual. They weren't typical for how I lived prior to Mother Malia dropping into the body. My human was very present. I had all of my memories. I had my life. I had my same home and people in my life, etc. Still had my business, but my relationship to it all was vastly different. I felt very detached, but not in a bad way. It was just that I was floating above it all. It was almost like a distant past. I had no dissonance or resonance with it. I was observing it. I was in full observer mode. And if you've ever heard of people that have had heart surgeries, let's say, and they take on the energy of the heart that they've had implanted in them, or various stories like that, it would be comparable to that in the sense that I recognize my life, and I also didn't recognize my life. My need to grow my hair changed, and my diet changed, the type of clothing I wore changed, the texture of materials on my skin changed, my activities changed. I had just bought a new vehicle right before I became Mother Malia, and I didn't end up driving it for, I think, a good 8 to 12 weeks, because my executive functioning was different. I knew I had the files in my head of how to drive, but I couldn't open the file, if you know what I mean. When you get those PDFs that are locked, you can read from it, but you can't open it and edit it. And because my executive functioning was different, because I was no longer in my left brain, I wasn't even in my right brain, I was in my whole brain. But for ease, I will just say I was in my right brain. So I didn't have the access to executive functioning that I would have liked as my human self. And so anything that required a lot of decision making or important decision making, etc., was just different. Even, if you think of all of the commitments I made before I became Mother Malia, the programs I was already running, and the projects I was working on. I was working on a rebrand for my human. Little did I know I was rebranding into Mother Malia, which is still a journey, by the way. I'm much more integrated now, but it's not so easy to explain sometimes what it's like to be Mother Malia because I feel the need to identify sometimes, my human is saying this versus Mother Malia is saying this. And we're the same person. We're not a split personality. We're not multiple personalities. It's that some things that I transmit will sound more human. And so I want to qualify for people. I know this sounds like something a human would say. And yes, this is my human saying this. And then there are things that will come out that are, it's Mother Malia. And Mother Malia, I mean, we work together, I suppose, because it's my human talking right now. We work in tandem, but Mother Malia controls a lot of things and the human part takes care of more of the human things, getting up in the day and moving the body and feeding the body and talking to people, etc. Opening up a computer, Mother Malia shows up and sort of directs the higher consciousness of the mission and the higher consciousness of the human, etc. Even I'm telling you this as my human, there will be times that my human might have certain thoughts, and Mother Malia, I will hear her in a different kind of voice in my head, just channeling this high level perspective to shift my perspective for me. And it's kind of neat that I have my own built-in channel, I suppose, for my human, if that makes sense. I don't need to hire someone, so to speak. I can just have Mother Malia drop in, usually unexpected, to give me something, it's crystal clear. It's very clear and very precise. Oh, my dear. Well, that was fun. Okay. Hi, Kia. I'm going to need you to watch for this and edit this, please. So, anyways, back to being Mother Malia in the beginning. I didn't have a worry in the world. I was smiling 24/7. Uh, I didn't necessarily resonate with my former life. It was familiar but distant. I had many commitments prior to my changes that I needed to rework. There were people that were in my programs with me when I was fully my human, and then all of a sudden I came back as Mother Malia. And some people, in fact, most people, uh, handled the shift beautifully. They were up for the newness of it. They felt the resonance. They had an instant familiarity with who Mother Malia was. They couldn't explain it either. They didn't know. There's not a lot of information online about Mother Malia, and that doesn't mean that she doesn't exist. It's actually cause for question. There's a lot of information written about a lot of different channels, and there's not about Mother Malia, and that's okay. We know who controls the dissemination of information, and so that's a bigger question of why isn't there a lot of information about her? But that being said, a lot of people they just went with the flow the way I was going with the flow. And then there were, of course, some people that didn't resonate with Mother Malia, or they didn't know what to make of the change. And of course, when we don't understand things, when something is unknown to us, we fear it and then we judge it. And then our judgment can be withdrawal, it can be avoidance, it can be attack, it can be judgment, it can be whatever it is. So in the beginning, I had a lot of people feeling great resonance and feeling compelled to shower me with gifts and so on. And then I also had some people that were definitely getting their pitchforks out and throwing out different lingo of being false light, being dark, being mentally ill, whatever. And even with that, I was able to observe all of that. That's the gift of Mother Malia. She operates from neutrality and above. So I was able to just hover above it and just say, oh, this is interesting. And this is, when the collective mother wound and the collective persecution wound really showed its head. And I didn't even have words for it at that time, but I saw it happening. And then the other thing that happened was that uh, I also became of interest, unbeknownst to me at the time, even though I kind of wasn't surprised by it, to actual agents of the Matrix, those who worship the Baphomet. They were sent into my world to pretend to be clients, or to pretend to be colleagues, or to pretend to be vendors to study me. to create false synchronicity from what I shared so that they could feed it back to me and say, oh, we have these in common, so that I would somehow say, oh, look at that, we have synchronicity. And the interesting thing about that is occasionally I can think of a few examples, which I won't go into right now, where people said they had the same interests as me, and I would ask them questions just out of innocence, oh yeah, tell me more about your favorite such and such. And they would give an answer that was so left field, like it had nothing to do with that. And I remember thinking, oh, that's odd. And then as time went on, I started to realize what was happening. And that's okay too, because uh, even those folks being sent into my world to study me helped me to really understand how the matrix works, how the agents of the matrix work, etc. And it's worth noting, I did this at the beginning of Becoming Mother Malia, but it's worth noting now as a side note, if that is you, if you're watching this and you worship the Baphomet, or you know that you're an agent of the matrix, that you have to answer to your puppet master, uh, in accordance with natural law, you are required to reveal yourself now. And you can simply email us once you get this to let us know who you are. And you know that in natural law, you're required to do that. So let's move along. I just wanted to say that because it's not lost on me that there are people in my email list that are not here of pure intention. So as I've shared, I had what we will jokingly say, just that my human will say this as rubberneckers, watching it all unfold from the curbside. They were coming into my world to see, what's going on with this crazy lady. We had some people, of course, coming with their pitchforks and throwing cheap shots and, saying things like, oh, there's darkness, there's false light, etc. And I say it's a cheap shot because there's no way to disprove that. Perhaps you've had that experience as well. I know many of you have. I hear these stories all the time, and how much that impacts you, and why I have an upcoming thing, which you'll learn about in a little bit, about the witch wound and how that's capping your income and client attraction, etc. What Just as a side note, what these folks don't realize is that they're simply looking in the mirror, because this is a world of mirrors, right? And so they're simply seeing in you or an I what they haven't dealt with in themselves. It doesn't mean that they are those things. It means that they have a fear of being perceived as those things or becoming those things. And so it's easier to project it out rather than to deal with where it really matters. So as I shared, the majority of people had recognition. They didn't need my presence to make sense to them to receive my transmissions, because they were self-led enough and in tune enough to tune into frequency and receive what resonated and leave the rest. And they were responding to frequency. They were just operating at a deep level of moving through this frequency-based reality by identifying frequency, right? They weren't still running the victim, villain, hero triangle, or the victim persecutor triangle, which is a product of the matrix, right? Where they always have to be looking for a villain or someone outside of themselves to fix them, or that they're a problem that's always broken, etc. They have already evolved out of the inverted game of life. Regardless of how people were receiving me, it showed up every day as my human was trying to integrate. I was, simultaneously trying to just process on my human level all of this massive change. There was a little bit of grief, of course, because as I mentioned to you earlier, I didn't get a timeout. Like, I didn't get to become Mother Malia and then press a pause button for even a weekend just to go back to my human life and have it be just completely human, if you get what I mean. No Mother Malia present, to kind of have one last hurrah. So I had to take it day by day. And I have had Mother Malia drop in. In hindsight, I now realize there were a few times Mother Malia dropped in over the years, probably, I think about, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, for about 6 weeks, and then another 6 weeks, maybe a few years prior to that. I've kind of lost the timeline around that. So after about 6 weeks or 8 weeks, I mean, I knew that she was here to stay. But I also thought, well, if it's like the others, it'll any day now, I'll go back to my human life and I'll just be able to channel Mother Malia when I create time and carve out time officially to channel Mother Malia. But that never happened. And that's okay. It is what it is. And now, 2.5 years in, I have so much clarity about the fact that Mother Malia is here to stay. And I'm much more integrated now. My voice has changed. If you were with me in the beginning, you'll notice I sound way more human than I do. I still pick and choose my when I leave the house, I pick and choose what events I'm going to go to, grocery shopping or, uh, uh, going to a sound healing ceremony or something like that, based on do I have it in me to mask today? Because Mother Malia, I never know when she's going to fully show up, right? Because she's kind of running the show in a lot of ways. And so there will be times where I'll be in public and of course I'm sensing all of the energy anyways. And then the hands will start to go and the channel will start to get a little higher, et cetera, et cetera. I never know when that's going to happen. So there is a degree of masking. I'm not saying masking is great. Perhaps you can relate to this as well, especially if you are what 3D world will say is on the spectrum, you're already used to masking. And I was as well for many years without realizing it. So it's not that I have anything to hide. It's that I have to tune into the setting and say, does this space make sense for me to be whatever's going to need to come out? And do I want to spend energy buffering, the various projections that are going to come at me when I'm so used to being projected upon? Sometimes I just want to be incognito and be uh, invisible, so to speak, when I move around the world, have anonymity, be able to go in and do the thing that I went there to do and leave. So it's still a journey, and I'm much more integrated now, as I mentioned, but I also this is going to be a process because it's still not, it's much easier than it was, but it's still not as easy as perhaps my human would like it to be to really explain who Mother Malia is, what her mission is, etc., to be able to help people identify this. This is a unique walk-in experience, we'll call it, because my human didn't get fully pushed out. I didn't fully become one being. I am Mother Malia, and I am my human, which you'll notice I can't say the name, and it's not because that name is bad. It's because I just simply can't. It's like saying my name is Frank. It doesn't resonate. So I just simply say my human. But of course, in conversations with Mother Malia, she has been with me my whole life. But of course, the human was pushed first because the human had to have human experience and learn how to master all of the variations of being human, the making of the mistakes, having regrets, the successes, the quote unquote failures, all of the things to be able to relate to other humans who are also God in a body here to have a human experience, to be also to be able to come to refine how to best support humans that are where you're at and where I'm at, where the veil is very thin. It's an interesting journey, isn't it, when the veil is very thin? Because the thing that keeps us in being human is the veil. I'm not talking about illusion. I'm talking about there does need to be a little bit of a filter between worlds because otherwise we would completely float away. And certainly there were times as Mother Malia in the beginning where I wondered, am I going to completely float away? Like my awareness was way more expanded than I was used to. And I was already, pretty aware, having taught the Akashic Records for a really long time. So now it's a matter of finding a way to be out in the material world. Not finding, but, deciding, I suppose, because I'm the creator of my own reality, how I wish to be out in the world now that I've taken this sabbatical to integrate, to really know what is mine, know what is not mine. I've also decided I'm not clearing anymore on behalf of the collective. I've spent the last year and a half clearing the collective wounds, having some pretty intense projections and various such things. And I'm simply not available for that anymore. And I only share that because I invite you to consider the same thing. What's going to be in your movie screen? I've decided I'm no longer willing to be, or I've decided that now the state is I'm unblameable, unshameable, untouchable, invisible. I am the fire. I don't get burned because I am the fire. I don't get bulldozed because I am the force of nature and I'm willing to really be that now. The human parts of me that had to be willing to, set Mother Malia free, so to speak. The human part of me felt the need to steward Mother Malia in the beginning because I spend 24/7 with her, on a human level. And I know uh, how special she is, so to speak, how honored I feel to be able to share life with her and how pure intended she is. And so there was an element of needing to gatekeep a little bit of that. But of course, Mother Melia sat down and had a little chat with me and said, like, I don't need you to gatekeep me. My frequency will gatekeep, those that are coming into this space that aren't of pure intention. And back to the agents of the matrix and so on, I can't really control whether they're going to come into my email list, etc. You'll notice I'm much different about what I share about what's going on behind the scenes, simply because I have no interest in letting them in on that, right? You get to find out what happens in my inner world and behind the scenes and how I'm creating reality and how I'm bending reality, how I'm turning tax bills into refunds and how I'm, collapsing my dream home into my reality and the sanctuary and various such things when you come into my inner world. Right. And on a frequency level, the agents of the matrix, those worshiping the Baphomet, simply don't get in. But my point for sharing this is that I have declared as the only author and authority in my reality that those who are operating from that place, I get that they are part of consciousness and they are also not welcome in my world, right? I get to be invisible to them. And I'm grateful for the opportunities and the lessons that they taught me for sure, like I shared, about being the only authority in my reality. And in fact, I don't imagine I would have remembered who I really was as the one and you as the one and helping you remember you as the one if it wasn't for some of the shenanigans that they threw into my world, so to speak. But now uh, I am fully integrated. Of course, there's still going to be some fine tuning and refinement, but there would be even if I was moving through the world as a human, right? We're always refining ourselves. We're essentially dying every day, so to speak. The versions of us, even the version of you that started this video may feel different than the version of you that's ending this video, right? We're always evolving, we're always refining, and we're always creating reality. As you know, there's a difference between am I creating it very intentionally, not through the avatar, but through the one that is pure consciousness in the body. Very different realities. So that's that's where things are at now. So if you're here and you're choosing to still stay connected with me, and you may not, please know that entry into any of my spaces, meaning any of my events that I host and any of my inner circles that I'm hosting, starts with the baseline understanding that you create your own reality, that you decide to be the version of you that already has results. Yes, I encode my spaces, whether it be one-to-one or my masterminds or my, sort of short form events. I don't know how else to call them right now. I infuse them with great intent that you have immediate shifts. And you do. And I know that because I get emails all the time. But when you decide, and this will be whether it's my space or any other space, when you decide that you're the person that gets results and you've decided you're the person that already has results, that your results are not dependent upon me or any other coach, that's when things shift at Godspeed. So I leave that with you. I hope that answered some of your questions. If you have more questions, by the way, that I didn't answer about what it's like to be Mother Malia, then please respond back and let me know, and perhaps I'll create a part two if we get enough questions. But I appreciate sharing this time with you. I felt really strongly guided to share this with you. So there's probably a reason for that that none of us can see right now until we know, right? It'll reveal itself. But I'm excited to share all of the new creations that are coming through this year. And I'm very honored. It's my great joy, my great honor to share this space with you. So thank you for being here. And I hope to see you very soon. Bye for now.